What in the world is a gravity off switch? Varda Space is a startup that launches small capsules up into orbit for the purpose of manufacturing things in microgravity. After the manufacturing process is done, it returns back to Earth so that they can pick up the payload. So what would you even want to manufacture in space? Wouldn't it just be easier to manufacture stuff on Earth? It turns out that if you could switch gravity off, it would likely help you develop new pharmaceutical drugs. The reason is that crystallization happens differently in low gravity versus normal Earth gravity. Crystals grow more perfectly without gravity for obvious reasons. Sedimentation happens differently and liquids move differently. Their movement isn't commandeered by gravity like it is on Earth's surface. And a lot of modern pharmacology depends on crystals. If you manipulate the crystalline structure of certain medications, drug companies can enhance or inhibit certain properties of medications. For example, if you manipulate the molecular structure of crystals, you can affect things like the shelf life and the absorption rate by the body. And actually, the active ingredient in Advil is a crystal. And large pharmaceutical companies have been doing drug research on the ISS for a while now. A famous example is that Merck improved one of its cancer drugs called Keytruda on an experiment on the ISS. They did a bunch of experiments on the crystalline structure of their medication and they proved successful. So it ended up trying to mimic parts of that low gravity environment back on Earth. Crystallization seems to be the most important opportunity in space pharmaceutical manufacturing, but there are also other benefits. Maybe you could study bone and muscle loss, which ends up happening at a much more accelerated rate in low gravity environments versus on Earth. Another thing Varda does that's probably less important is that they contract with governments primarily to run tests on technologies that the government has developed that they want to test in high-speed re-entry from orbit. Let's say that the Air Force wanted to test a communication system that needed to be able to operate at extremely high speeds and temperatures. Rather than building their own test vehicle and testing their sensors, they could rent space theoretically on Varda's capsules to run quick tests on these sort of atmospheric re-entry episodes. I think it's safe to say the jury's still out on the long-term prospects of drug manufacturing in space. Varda has done 4 flights so far. 2 were focused on pharmaceutical manufacturing and 2 were focused on that secondary use case of atmospheric re-entry tests. If Varda does have signed contracts with large drug companies, and they say they do, it's likely for pre-commercial R&D. There's not much public information on what kind of drugs they're testing or any timelines or any development programs. And it's also possible that Varda is actually planning to do some research in drug development in-house, as in they're not going to wait for a drug company to come to them, but will actually proactively run their own experiments. I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds like that's part of the plan at least. So let's see what happens. They just raised almost $200 million recently, so obviously they're not going bankrupt anytime soon. They have a few more launches planned, but they haven't said much about them, so I'm sure after they happen, they'll release some information about what was going on.